All right, I'll call this meeting to order. Please join me for opening exercise, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you just take the roll today? Sure. All right, so approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion.
So moved. Oh, I can be second.
Mr. Delacorte. Any comments, any changes or anything?
No, I just have an update that Dr. Susamak will give under old business about transportation, no action, just an update.
All right. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Welcome, everybody. Everybody here. All right, we'll move into curriculum. 2.01, attendance officers.
I'll take that. So if you could recall, last year, we discovered that the magistrate required us to have the board take action on who was allowed to submit a summary charge for attendance issues, truancy, stuff like that. So we brought everyone's name on there and moved it forward for your approval. We finalized it with the district magistrate. Now that we have a new chief, we have to go through it one more time. So as you can see, it's the same list as last year. The only change is Chief Barasic is now our chief of police, and he'll be able to do those truancy charges like Chief Tobin used to. So we have that for your consideration in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions or issues, comments? So none. 2.02, Center for Humanistic Change.
I will take this one. So this is a traditional agreement that we annually take action on. So for those of you who recall, we have a SAP, Student Assistance Provider program at the county. Every school district has one. Center for Humanistic Change is who facilitates our SAP liaison services from the county for 23-24. They've been our provider for a number of years and are continuing into 23-24. No cost to the district, traditional agreement you've taken action on.
All right. Thank you. 2.03, okay, we have nothing. Policy, I think there were nothing in there, right?
Yeah, but I would like to make a quick statement if you don't mind.
Certainly, go ahead.
So we are looking to possibly bring 2 policies before the board at the August voting meeting. We're working through a couple, we'll call them more challenging policies for you to consider. We mentioned it to you folks before. It has to do with our use of facilities as well as the distribution of materials by non-school organizations. And so this is something we've been working together on. We're trying to get that language really spot on before we present it to you. So we're going to have it for you, hopefully for your consideration in a couple weeks for you to take a look at for first reading.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move into operations, adult lunch.
Yep, I'll take this one as well. So in June, we always approve our school lunch prices, and once you did that, on that school lunch price, we had an adult listed price. However, when we applied for our application for the 23-24 National School Lunch Program, it was discovered that there has to be a certain dollar amount increase in between the highest student lunch we have and the adult price. So this year, that threshold set at $1.15, or it's like $1.16 higher than our highest price. And so we need to make it our adult meal $4.50 in order to meet that threshold. So we just basically adjusted the adult meal price slightly to make sure we were in compliance with the Division of Food and Nutrition. So all of our teachers will have to pay a couple pennies more.
I was gonna say, what was it before it was $4.50?
I believe it was, we approved it like $4.30 or something like that.
So it's
or-
fixed right
Yeah, or $4.40. I could go back to the
No,
previous
it's okay.
agenda and
It's
look.
just-
It was like a nickel. It's still a heck of a bargain if you ask me for what
Right.
you get for $4.50. You're not gonna find it anywhere.
All right, thank you. 4.02, the floor scope request change number 5.
Yes, so I did talk to Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Katzinger about this as the construction committee folks and sent you a brief update. So we did have some moisture issues in the middle school, primarily on the areas that are at ground level when they pulled up the old flooring. And so, and I talked to Mr. Delaker as well. And so some of the board members did look at that when it happened. I called them because of being board president in the construction committee and going up and taking a look at it. We decided the flooring company would not warranty the flooring unless the moisture barrier was put down before we put all the new flooring down, as you recall. So we did authorize them for a change order to put the moisture barrier in all of the classrooms that are at ground level prior to putting the floor. We hope, I say once and for all, that it will solve the moisture issues, although I do believe that we need to do some outside excavation to take the water away from the building, which I believe will be forthcoming. But for the moment, we didn't want to hold up the project. We wanted the flooring down so they can move through the classrooms. And I'm happy to report, Dr. Snowick and I were up there today. I sent you some pictures on Friday of what the new classrooms look like. They have primarily the whole downstairs done, some of the upstairs done and ready, and they're turning them over for us to clean. I'm not cleaning anything, our custodians to clean, and then put furniture back into those classrooms and are working their way down the main hall. So that, if you recall, they do, for those of you who have been up or seen the pictures, the rooms look like brand new rooms. We did ceilings, we did lights, smoke detectors, security. I did report to you some of the things that we made changes with, like the doors are on back order. They arrived today and they're going to be here tomorrow. Some of those security changes, et cetera, are still coming, but most of them will be done before school. So they look like brand new classrooms in the areas that they're in, and the building is starting to look a building again. Because there were times where it wasn't looking like a building, but I'm happy to report. But there is a $100,000 change order for the moisture barrier before they put the flooring down. That is what's on your agenda, and I'll certainly take any questions you have. But I sent you pictures of what the floor looked like, and then I sent you certainly classroom pictures of what they look like now.
Anybody?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. Last week I called her Jennifer to see if we could go along on as part of the construction committee, on a walk through the building just to see what it looked like. And I just want to say how fortunate we are to have the staff that we have with Jennifer and Troy and Bill DeVico monitoring this project. And this moisture was a surprise, like you often have when you renovate a building. And the mitigation that they came up with and the cost, which came out to be $100,000, it started out a lot more than that. And I think he went out for another bid or two just to make sure we were in the ballpark with the proposed fix for this moisture barrier. But and without a buildings and grounds supervisor, they really moved through this problem expeditiously. And and last week it looked like it was going to be a rush to the finish, but they got their act together and they got the McClure to man up, or not McClure, the GC to man up with people to install the flooring so that we could start in time. But we avoided, I think, a late start maybe.
We're still gonna be to the wire, but it'll be done.
And,
It's still a race.
and there
It's
is-
still a race.
And we have a plan B.
Mr. DeVico does have a plan B to move some folks
But
around.
we
in
are
the
so
school.
fortunate to have this staff and Jennifer's leadership to work us through these kinds of issues. I don't know, how long have you been a superintendent? 5 years?
Right.
And every year, something started at the beginning of the school year that looked like a disaster, but she found a way to work through it. And I just want to commend you, Jennifer, and all the staff for stepping up and making this happen.
Well, if I could say something, yes, I would like a normal year to start, but the majority of the work, I mean, I do have to say, I mean, I certainly have been very involved, but Troy Weetes is our director of operations currently. So he has been up there a whole lot and holding, we both have met because we've been, off on vacations and things and trying to make sure that we're both informed, but he's been doing a lot of the operations work. And the schedules to make sure people are accountable to giving us classrooms and being done on deadlines, and has done a really good job with that. So I can take credit for it, but Troy has done a great job.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, next item, 403, there's nothing there. District finances, 5.01, River Rock Academy approval.
I'll go through some of these, and then Ms. Edmonds, if she would like to go through some of them. So River Rock is a placement we have students placed at. This is a routine agreement, went through solicitor review, and this is the new rates for the following school year. You want Ms. Edmonds to run through the rest of them?
Sure.
Well, I can do 502 and 503.
Okay.
Is that right? So both of those are agreements where we place students out of district. They are routine contracts. You've seen something very similar. The Whitehall one changed by about $5, I believe. The behavioral health changed a little bit with some of the finances, but all the terms are relatively the same except for a 30-day to a 60-day stipulation and an end date. We're fine with all of that as far as the programming for the students. So the agreement as outlined will work for us.
Okay, so standard as in years past, slight increase on both.
Yes.
Date, time, and change extended on the
Correct.
second. Okay. 5.04, Amplify M-Class Divals 8th edition.
I will take this in Mrs. Stitzel's absence. So Amplify is our benchmarking program we use at elementary. We have previously used Dibbles 8, we are now using Dibbles 8. They split off the company and are essentially using two different goals. We are using Dibbles 8, so this is the contract. For advantageous pricing, we did ask for a 3-year agreement, which you'll see it is an online rating benchmark, which will be used with all K-5 students, and you see the pricing attached. So the contract as well as the updated rider is also attached, all both reviewed, and they are up for your approval.
Okay, thank you. Next item, 5.05, CLIU 21, Title I Equitable Services Agreement.
So I will also take this. Title I is the service that, if you recall, we do provide a portion of our Title I services to what's called equitable services. So those students that would normally be Northwestern Lehigh students that would be placed in non-public schools. And so our amount we have to allocate for non-public Title I for next year is $2,480. You accepted asking Leanne to apply for Title I on our behalf. That is the portion that we have to provide to our students in non-public schools for Title I services. Routine agreement you approve each and every year.
Is the amount usually the same?
It's a very small proportion of our as your allotment changes, the amount changes. And if you remember last year, we did get a significant increase in Title I services. The Title I amount provided to us for services.
Okay, 5.06, Community Education Classes.
I will take this. This is also a routine item for Mrs. Stitzel. If you look at the attachment, the community courses we are recommending for fall, which are yoga, fall 1 and 2, winter 1, which is Zoom, and winter 2, and spring are all available. As a reminder, these have to net kind of neutral. So Mrs. Stitzel will do the calculation in terms of if it's not net neutral to the district, they're not offered. But traditionally, we have pretty good enrollment in the courses that are offered here, and community members participate in.
There used to be more. I guess it's only yoga these days. Meaning there were a couple other
Couple other
classes.
options,
Yeah,
yeah. There
that
used
other
to be
people
basket
do.
weaving, I remember.
Yeah, and I remember some type of country line dancing or something.
This might be a good idea for a board retreat.
You want to do yoga?
Yeah.
You need to get the will of
What
the
do you think?
board.
What do you think?
This would be when I ask for the will of the board before I schedule a yoga for
We
us.
vote on it
while John and Joe are out.
They're not here,
Right?
right?
Like,
Oh,
they went on
sorry, you
vacation.
weren't here.
I'll wait for some direction from you all for that one.
Just wanted to get a reaction.
Uh-huh.
That's good.
Not here, they can't. They're just auto signed up.
We can surprise them at the next meeting.
Yes. It'll be thank you for volunteering me to do things at the last meeting in June. It's just a thank you.
Okay, 5.07, the reports.
I will do this for Christy. I have both the June recap and some details if there's anything that you're interested in from the June or the August the May or the June run, both of which have dated August on them. I do have some details. Christy and I also, just so you know, are in discussions a little bit about what the timing of the state budget will be and when we have to make some changes in terms of pulling things out of CDs, et cetera. We are a district that obviously has a pretty good tax collection. The majority of our money comes from tax collection. So for a few months, we're okay, but we did recently hear it could be as late as November until we have a passed budget, which means that then the state funding is held up until that time. But we do receive about $14.3 million in state funding, so we will just run on residential taxes that are coming in, and then obviously state and federal. But we'll keep an eye on that. I'll give you an update as we move forward about what the status of the budget is and when we are cash flow in terms of a problem.
Yeah.
Any questions on specifics on the reports? She left me notes.
All right, seeing none, we'll move forward. If that was all right, additional, there is nothing, so we move forward to old business.
I did ask Dr. Susnova to give you a quick transportation, he's the director of operations currently, quick transportation update, and a couple information that might be going out to parents that he'll give you an update on.
All right, so we've been really busy this summer with a myriad of things. The transportation is, one of those pieces that is the gift that keeps giving each summer. And so the department's busy getting the fleet ready. We've been, washing buses, getting them inspected by the state police, and all the things that make them road ready each year. But the big piece is getting the routes ready. And so if you remember, the district engaged last spring with First Student to have that portion of the operation kind of handled by them. So our First Student routes all of our children, and that is all that information is provided to them by us. So we give them like the addresses and all of the other stuff. We gave them our old routes, and the directive to them at the time was, we want you to route each child and make it the most efficient run you could possibly do, with the goal that we wanted that done 2023-24 school year prior to the last day of school. This past last year's day of school. And the reason why we did it like that was so we could have the bus drivers run those runs before they got out of here in the summer. They don't work for us in the summer, and it was important for us to get that feedback. So that's different than what we've done in previous years. So what we ended up doing was we self-promoted all the students that we knew and just made assumptions at the time, like, hey, the 12th graders are gone, 11th graders we're gonna assume are gonna be here. We don't know much about the incoming kindergartners. We'll figure it out, but let's just route everybody else. So we had the drivers run them, give us their feedback. The trainers reviewed their feedback, looked at all the different routes, made sure it made sense if somebody gets it from a substitute driver standpoint or something like that. Made all of those changes, and we've been making those changes throughout the summer. We did our rollover, and when it came July 1st, right, we rolled over our student information system. So now we had everybody in there. So everything basically somewhat changed. So because we did self-promotion, most of it was pretty good, but now we got the new kindergartners and we got kids that left and new kids that enrolled that wasn't part of that self-promotion. So we're kind of working through that finalization process now. So we feel good about where the routes are. We're just trying to button them up as we speak. We're working on specialized transportation, working with Mrs. Edmonds' department, getting the van routes for all out of district and other placements, all that squared away. And just making those final tweaks. We will have the bus stops for your review, as we do every year. We'll have that for the next board meeting. That's typically when we bring it forward for your consideration and approval. So from a route standpoint, we feel like we're a much better place. Now, with that said, and the idea which we are going to propose and say that we're moving forward with is based on all the students are routed on the bus. Okay, so just keep that in mind, because on paper, our buses are full. Like every kid is on a bus, and that's created some challenge for us. We're striving for that 60 minutes. I'm going to be very transparent here and tell you that there's going to be some rides as they are right now, maybe a little bit over that 60-minute threshold. That's just because we only have a certain number of buses. There's only a certain number of drivers. And so one of the solution we're gonna offer will help to curtail that as well. And I'll leave that to the end because that's gonna be a little bit more in conversation. We are still battling a staffing shortage. We unfortunately lost a number of drivers at the end of the school year. They were, van drivers that were like, hey, I got a better part-time job at like, I don't know, like Target or something like that, so, we're working through filling those out. Mrs. Matika has done some campaign work to try to generate some folks to apply to us and some road signs and stuff like that. And if she's gonna mention that to you, I don't want to take too much of her thunder, but we're trying to grab some of the, whoever we can to drive for us. We are continuing to work with First Student. If you remember in June, you approved us to solicit them for some assistance in that office for the start of school, where we have somebody identified. We're working through the scheduling piece right now. This person will be here on site at least for when we start running transportation. We're hoping to have that person on site each day we're running. That way, there's like a decision maker up there beyond just me doing everything else that we could help with. Parents could help with any type of troubleshooting and stuff like that. The individual comes with an immense amount of transportation experience, so I think it's going to be a good thing. And I've also, as part of that engagement, I've requested them to take a look at several things to offer some best practice recommendations where we can shore up, some improvements maybe in that department to make us a little bit more efficient. All right, so this is last but certainly not least, we want to share a concept that we're implementing in 23-24. We threw this kind of out there preliminarily to some people, and you may have heard this from either Jen or I mention it. Every year we have a number of students scheduled for transportation. We schedule them all. Those buses pull in. They're not filled. Some of them are filled to the gills. Other ones are not filled to the gills. There's capacity there. And so we looked through this summer what it would take for us to move forward with having families opt out of transportation, and we're moving forward with that process. So we every year allow students to apply for driving parking permits. If you get a parking permit in 23-24, and we're going to communicate this out to the high school families this week through one of Mr. Gibler's letters that say parking permits are allowed to be applied for, we're going to unenroll you from transportation. So you get a parking permit, we're going to take the route from, we're going to take you off our route, essentially.
Will that affect siblings of the student with the parking permit?
No.
Okay.
Only the student that has a parking permit. Now, with that said, we cannot deny anybody transportation. So in the letter, it will say, however, if you feel strongly you want to maintain your route, we can't deny you. We're going to have you fill out a form. We'll make sure that that route is preserved and that spot is put, kept for that student. But that also said, somebody, their situation changes or what have you, they could also contact the transportation department and we could then, put them back on. So at no point are we denying anybody, but what we're saying is, we know there's a lot of students that drive, i.e. like Stone Sosnovic, and you're not going to get we're not going to put you on the route. So what that's going to allow us to do is going to make our adjustments. So we no longer need to go towards Stone's house. We can take those legs off. That's going to immensely reduce the overall time within our routing system. The second piece to that would be the elementaries and middle schools. And so in a separate letter, because the parking pass letter only goes to students that are eligible for those parking passes, we're going to try to appeal to our other families, and that will be more of an opt-out done by the family itself. We're going to ask them to fill out a form and say, if you're consistently, similar to what we did in COVID, if you're consistently driving your student back and forth to school, please consider helping us out by opting out of transportation. If you need that transportation service in the future, we'll gladly put you back on that transportation service and we'll reroute your child. However, if you're somebody who was fortunate enough to be able to drop off or pick up your child each year, please consider doing this for us. And I think even if we get 20 to 30 kids, that's 20 to 30 kids less on a bus that we can help with our overall times. We think that those changes will really help the overall operation. The way we're trying to work this system is to have at least 1 to 2 standby drivers each day, because we typically have at least 2 people calling off each day, where we don't need to tap into our grounds guys to drive or our mechanics. Because when our grounds guys and mechanics have to drive, they're also not getting the stuff that they need to get done, so we're looking to build some capacity and ask our families to help us out. So you'll see that, or you may hear about that in the community. So that's why we wanted to bring it up. It's going to come out in a letter, 2 letters. And one is the parking pass letter, and the second one is that element, we'll call it the everybody else letter, okay? So from a sibling standpoint, they could tackle it that way. So they know, like, yeah, I'm driving with my older brother and my older brother drops me off. They may be able to feel that on that side of the thing. We're not going to make any assumptions with the parking pass piece. So that's basically where we are with transportation. We're getting down to the wire. We're feeling positive. We come back and we actually start, hey Jess, we start driving some of our out-of-district schools, our charter schools, August 14th, circle of season starts up. So we're hitting the road 2 weeks earlier than everybody else. So glad to take any questions you have about transportation or where we're at or anything related to ops.
Yeah, this is routing, this opt-out seems like it's a kind of a permanent change to the routing. So if a family or a student can't drive one day, their car's in the garage or whatever, they're still gonna have to find a way in,
That's correct.
okay?
Yes.
Because you can't just reroute the bus every day for some straggler that they called in. for
That's
one day
absolutely
change.
right. And actually, because routing is done through first student, it may take up to 3 business days for us to get that route adjusted. So we work, we get the change. We as a district have to look at the change. That's a quick process, make sure
Okay,
pass that up to the team. The team implements that change, it's synced back down, and we communicate it out. So it's not like you can just pick and choose. You're going to
okay, so it had to be clear to them that if there's a glitch in the availability of the car or the parent, that they'll have to find a way to get it.
Yeah, we'll try to make it as clear as possible with the communication that goes out.
I think it's a reasonable request to the families.
And I think it's going to be a well-met request, meaning we kind of went through it, like I mentioned before COVID, we were really struggling there, and we said, hey, just because we were doing the social distancing on buses and stuff like that, if you're able to drive and or what have you, can you please help us out? We had a really nice response there. I think everybody knows this is not a Northwestern issue, it's a national issue, and why not? If you could do it, help the district out, help your neighbor out by, taking your son and daughter off, because that's only going to benefit those other students with maybe a lesser ride time, so. Any other questions with transportation? Okay.
You want to do your sign plug?
Oh, yeah, I'm not too proud to have a commercial break to say that we've ordered about 35 of those signs. They are throughout the community. I brought them along in case anyone knows someone who lives near a high traffic area, preferably not near a bar or a prison, but if you could.
Now you're getting specific.
Yeah, but I've actually put them on my parents' property in Parkland School District, and We have others going out throughout the community. So if you feel like you could take one and put it in a high traffic area, it would be appreciated. We did send out postcards, 5,100 postcards to our community. It didn't recruit the way we had hoped, but if in hindsight, it was a notice that we have trouble providing transportation for our students. So it served two purposes. It didn't recruit the individuals we wanted, but it did confirm that we are making an effort and we are short on bus drivers. So there's 3 signs over there. If you need more, let me know. I'll drop them off. I'll put them up myself.
Right, any other old business?
Yeah, I have a question I'd like to pose. I was looking at the agenda and asked Jennifer if we could review where we stand on enrollment and kindergarten. So it can't be put on the agenda, there's not enough notice of it, or they bringing it up on the old business just to get an update of where we stand with our enrollment.
Yeah, I can certainly give that to you. I also can throw it on as a more updated as we close, like to jump to August 16th. If you want me to throw like the actual spreadsheet on there. So you just specifically asked about kindergarten
Kindergarten and those classes that
that
we
were concerning. So
concerned about.
when we met in April, I obviously said we need to watch our kindergarten enrollment, and I was concerned about both first grades and second grade at Weisenberg. So we did get a number, you did receive an email from me, we got a number of enrollments in kindergarten. So we did add a 4th section of kindergarten to Weisenberg. I don't have a reason for this, but they appear to be opposite every other year, which makes 0 sense. And what I say when I mean that is, so in terms of class sizes, Weisenberg's 4th grade and Northwestern's 5th grade are big. Northwestell's 4th grade and Weisenberg's 5th grade are small. They literally cross every other year. The same thing happens with 2nd and 3rd, the same thing happens with kindergarten. So if you remember last year, this time we talked about Northwestell's kindergarten because it was at 73, but Weisenberg was 48. And we we're like, what? It is now the same opposite direction. So now Northwestell is 51, well, right now 53, and Weisenberg's at 76. So when we presented at the board, when I made the decision or recommendation at the time to go with 3 kindergarten teachers, we were at 65 in kindergarten, which drilled out 21 and 22 in kindergarten. From that time to now, they have 76 kindergartners at Weisenberg, which is why I added the class, which still takes them to 19, which is 1 more than Northwestell's running. But I don't have any rational thought as to why every other year the class size is different. So Bill, Northwestern Elementary is running 53 students in kindergarten with 3 sections, so that is class sizes of 18s. Weisenberg 76, we added the 4th, which is making class sizes of 19. I can send you the spreadsheet so you can write it down. Both first grades are both running higher than I would like. They're both running at 24. The challenge with first grade, as I said at the board workshop meeting when we made these recommendations, is Weisenberg only has 49 kids. So although 2 sections at 24 sound high, if you divide that by 3, they're at 15s and 16s. So you go super low. So this is the problem we're having with like equitable class sizes, because if I add it at Weisenberg and you take it down to 15s and 16s and Northwestell stays at 24, 25, that's like big differences when you're talking about 10 kids a section. So they're both running at class sizes of 24. Second grade at Weisenberg is the other one I'm watching. They have 75 students, 3 sections, so they are at 25, where at Northwestell they're running at 20. But the kindergarten teacher we added is not budgeted. That is an add. That was not something we recommended at the time. I have not made a decision to add anything in first grade, partially because of, I'm gonna call it the lopsidedness. The lopsidedness of the classes. You literally have 73 in one and 49 in the other. Like that's way lopsided. And I don't have a reason for why it's doing that. There's no rational reason why it doesn't make any sense. And second grade at Weisenberg is at 25. But I haven't changed any of those. I did add the kindergarten. So we're holding steady right there. We haven't gotten a lot of enrollments. So second grade at Weisenberg has been 25. They were in our presentation in April at 75 for 25s, and that's been consistent. They haven't lost, I think they lost one and gained one, but it's been 25 and it stayed 25. So those two are both above our class size guidelines currently. Both first grades are 2 above. Our class size guidelines in first grade go till 22. They're both at 24. Our class size guidelines in second grade go to 24 and Weisenberg's at 25, 1 over. I haven't made a change in either one of those, and unless something drastic happens to the dismay of probably our teachers, I won't make any changes in first or second. This is, continues to be the challenge because combined, if you divide them equally, they come out much lower. Not that I want to bring that bad word up again, but that was part of the challenge with elementary reconfiguration, because if you take those two at 127 and divide them by 6, now both your classes are at 21, 22, and both even. You don't have a high at 25 and a low at 20. That's part of the challenge with trying to make it work, because like the Weisenberg first grade, if I split that 48 into 3, which I have talked to the first grade teachers at Weisenberg, and I think they would like me to do, now you're at 15s and 16s. And although that sounds ideal, it's almost unrealistically small.
And that lopsidedness that you're talking about can't really be fixed by changing the boundary. Because the boundary affects all of the classes. It just-
Yeah, you'd have to like have a crystal ball to pick the right section is the problem, which is always the challenge. You fix the boundary, like how do you know you have it evenly distributed across grade level? And there's not, like, I mean, I challenge anybody, I don't know the reason. Like it doesn't make any logical sense. Like there's not the same thing in pubs or in charter schools. Like there's not like, oh, that's why it's doing that. I mean, literally, if you look at it, I showed Bill, which is probably why he asked. It's North Estelle's kinder and Weisenberg's first grade. It's cross across every single grade level. One has a high, so like I said to Maria the other day, well, you're at high class next year. Like if the same pattern continues, but I don't know why it's a pattern. It doesn't make any logical sense why it would every other year, one would be higher than the other.
When you're comfortable adding to your thing. I bet you it has something to do with family makeups. If you were able to dial it down detailed, like very detailed, I wonder if it's something with the way that people are adding to their families and having kids and then differences of
But
that.
wouldn't it be?
Because for instance,
Yeah,
like
but
mine are
wouldn't it be consistent then?
Wouldn't it say like, so for example, you know, the Weisenberg side of town adds more children because they have bigger, whatever, like they have.
but I'm
more
wondering if they're
children.
adding them at like a different
Like it happened at
rate.
one point and now.
Like for
all of a
instance,
sudden
my
it's just
kids are 19
continuing.
months apart,
Right,
but maybe some families have a 3-4 year gap. And then it's continuously like kind of
That's where-
It
And we
just-
different
saw
things.
a
Yeah.
big decline in 2008. So like everything went down. So like our enrollments were expected to be this. And I think when that depression and economic problem happened, people made different life choices about how many kids we were gonna have and job stability, et cetera. And so you saw a decline, but it was consistent decline. It wasn't,
Yeah.
I mean, I
I think
don't
they're
know.
still having them. I just wonder what the spacing
Yeah.
is like in people's families and like in like the little groups and areas, you know what I
Because in some
mean?
cases, it's a full section of kids. I mean, you're talking about sections that vary from 48 to 73 and 76. Like that's
That's a
a full
lot.
section.
Well, that's what I'm
of
saying,
kids.
like in the case of me and like our friend groups, our kids are relatively in like the same grades. And we were all having kids like right at the same, so it makes me wonder if there's just differences in that.
But we used to have bubbles that went through,
Mhm.
and they just passed through every year.
You did,
Get
and
to
we
the next
And we
class.
still do to a certain degree in certain classes as a whole are bigger together, but it doesn't go back and forth like that.
I have a question though, being that we have this new routing that we did not have at the time, I'd be curious to see, because that was one of the main objections. If we combined, what would those routes look like if you combined? Being if you could run it with the current students that are enrolled in the current kindergarten classes coming in. I would just be curious. And then I'd also be curious to kind of dial it down and simplify it as to like, here are the pros of doing this and here are the cons, if you would ever want to revisit that as a solution. Because it doesn't seem like this problem will go away because it keeps doing this in a yearly pattern every single year. I'm not saying that that's the direction we should go, and I'm not saying that that's like what you're even thinking, but I personally, just from being an analytical person, I like to see like things, and I also like to hear benefits. So if you're saying that this will preserve these programs because we're able to combine and not have to cut elsewhere, or you're able to say like, this is financially going to help us this way, or educationally this way, like, I think we want to see all the rungs of a wagon wheel, not just like a straight, shot of like, this is what it could do.
I feel like they definitely presented all those things before when it was talked about. These were the benefits and these were but parents pick and choose what they.
Yeah, but I think if it was just a little bit more dialed in, I'm talking from experience, because I'll say right now, I was against doing the reconfiguration as a parent sitting here. But when I hear things like that, 15, 16 kids in a class and then 24, my kids go to Northwestern Elementary. So I would be really upset if my child was 23 in a room versus 15 or 16, when we all know that Northwestern Elementary kids generally need a little bit more support overall, because that's where we get our Title I funding from, that I would be, just a little bit more. So I think a lot of parents, and I know a lot of the parents that were against this in the beginning, they were concerned about all the busing and having little kids on a bus for over an hour, which now we have routing, so now we can do a little bit more detailed and drive it down. They were concerned about cost of busing, and they were concerned about, educationally, like splitting things up. But if the drop-off times have been changing and, things like that, it might just be worth looking into. That's all I'm saying.
The data was clear, I think, the last time we looked at reconfiguration, but the emotion is what got into the way of not wanting kids to cross the boundary from one end of the district to the other. And what you said about having the families upset about having first graders, 25 in class in one school and 15 in the other school, and the teachers. I mean, the teachers are looking at, their daily routine as well. It causes a problem. And I think that, I think we ought to revisit it too. And the only way to even this out is to put all the grades in one building and divide it by the number of teachers or number of rooms that we're gonna have to make them all consistent. It's an issue. The other issue, part of the equation is, I had a meeting with one of our kindergarten teachers who asked me to have coffee one day, and that was at the end of the last school year, talking about class size. And her concern about class size is that, we've had these sizes, and I don't want to say they were arbitrary. They were based on research and what all the other school districts in the country were doing, but to come up with those numbers. But 10, 20 years ago, the teachers started saying the kids were different coming to school. The kids coming to school these days are coming without the kind of respect for authority, respect for the teacher or adults like they used to. So what may have been a manageable 25 student class 10, 20 years ago isn't the case these days. And we've taken our teacher assistants out, which can help. But all these things need to be put into this discussion that we're going to have about class size and whether or not we ought to revisit reconfiguration to try to even this out a little bit and get a better way to manage our class sizes. That's why I want to go over this, because I think we need to keep this on the burner and keep discussing it and try to find a reasonable solution. It's probably not going to be met any better by the parents in the district than it was the last time we did it, but it's something we need to do.
What is the will of the board with what you want us to bring in? And when you would like us to bring it? Because what we got criticized pretty heavily on last time was communication and not informing people, the conversations like we're having right now. And we need to tell people what we're gonna talk about and when and what your expectation is.
I think for a public meeting, we could start with a discussion.
What do you want us
to bring
Well,
stuff?
just what we talked about tonight, you know, what are other factors? What are the benefits?
As
I
somebody
don't
who
know if you
was,
have to come up with a
who was
comment.
very vocally against it, that's a fair statement. I felt like we were pushing very hard from the school district side that it was educationally beneficial. And in my mind, as being a graduate, I'm like, I graduated from an awesome school. I had an awesome education. I'm a very successful person. I'm standing here as your portrait of a graduate. So to tell me that my child would be getting, you know, it's gonna be better for them educationally, like, but they're already getting awesome education. So like, how much better and how, you know? I think that there are other considerations that weren't focused on, and I think that there's a lot of very rational people that can tone down the emotion if we spell it out a little bit, like, we would be able to do this for the busing and not have to rely on parents, or we would be able to do this, you know, we would be able to preserve these programs that may get cut, like, we would be able to do this, like, I think it just needs to be a little bit more, I hate to use the word transparent because I felt like you were transparent, but I think it just needs to be a little bit more like, you know, we could lose teachers, or we could save classrooms and make these things smaller, but it needs to be more balanced the way it's focused. And that's coming from someone who stood there multiple times and argued why. And believe me, yes, a little bit of it was emotion, but a lot of it was practicality. And a lot of it was, I bought my house where I bought it because I wanted my kids to go to this elementary school because my husband is in that building back there. And I work in a position where I can't just leave at the drop of a hat. And so that's why I wanted that, you know? So I think a lot of it, you have to convince me as to why my kids, why it's going to benefit them more than just they're getting a great education, because I already know that they're getting one. And I think a lot of people already felt that way. And, you know, that's coming from a group of people that I can tell you that they went to school here, their kids now go to school here, their parents went to school here. I'm one of quite a few that have that legacy here. So
I have, my thought to that, a couple questions, and I don't know if this falls under old business or, I never know where it falls. So I typically just say it and then you tell me, no, you have to say it. So when we look at cyber charter, with an update with that, right? So
Numbers.
yeah. So when I hear things like that, and you know, whether or not I disagree or not, it's a conversation on some level when we talk about what's equitable, right? And what's fair, and I think it needs to be had. With that said, whether we like to hear this or not, brick and mortar public schools, it is about recruitment. It is about what you offer. People are savvier than they were many years ago. And so my fear when we talk about this and it's not done right, the ability to pull a kid from this school and go anywhere else is much greater than it was years ago. There's more opportunities, whether it's virtual, whether it's charter, private, religious-based schools. So I just want to be sure when we have these conversations, we understand the trends of people leaving and why they leave. Because that really should also drive the decisions that we make about enrollment, whether we move these grades here or these grades here. I think we have to really understand why people don't choose Northwestern, but live here. And I think that should also drive the decision, what we do moving forward. You know, we can put out like flyers and all kinds of stuff about coming here, but I don't know if somebody asks me, well, why do people leave? I don't know. I mean, I have a speculation. Is there data? Do people really, do we do an exit survey? Like when you leave a company, you know, I understand that you're leaving. Would you mind sharing with us what your driving factors were? I don't know that we have that tangible evidence to then drive a decision to say, these are the educational benefits of making those changes that were proposed however long ago that was.
Well, it's both educational and it's financial.
but it was also
And it's
presented as capacity.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of us were like, I mean, when I went to school here, it was in the peak and it just went higher and like we had, you know, so again, there's ways to present it in all facets. I want to know education, financial, capacity, like busing, like all of it, you know.
Yeah, financial too. If kids leave the district, that's the financial impact. You know, and yeah, like, can you make decisions based on the what ifs? No, I mean, I'm realistic to understand that, but I just wanna know the implications of when we have conversations and we gather data, that it's useful, that it's meaningful, and that we consider all aspects of what that would look like.
To answer your other question, we can certainly get some cyber charter data. We have some of that. Our principals last summer went through every student we have enrolled and the rationale as to why. I would tell you some of our older students have been there for some time, so their reason for going and or staying could be different than it was when they left. So some of our, even like middle school and high school students have been wherever it is that they are enrolled since kindergarten. And so the reason might have been different when they originally went there. I mean, Dr. Snowick and I have regular conversations with folks about doing tours and things and have successfully brought some of those people back. It was the reason why we went with some of the live instruction that Mrs. Stitzel talked about, because that was one of the things we heard. Like, I want a live teacher, even though it's online, and so-and-so school offers that. And so we found a live teaching school option that we can then also offer through our digital academy, which some of our kids are taking advantage of. But it's a host of reasons. But I would tell you, I will say that was one of the big responses from parents. If you do this, we will. And I don't know how you will know how many will make that decision should you make X, Y, Z decision. Because a lot of parents at the time said, if you do that, I'm going to enroll in cyber school. And I don't know how to anticipate. You make this decision, that's what the implication will be. I just don't know. But you will hear that for sure, because we heard that a lot. If you make this decision.
Well, and that's, but I don't even, like you just mentioned, there were conversations. That's the first, maybe not the first time I've heard all the intricacies of the conversation, but like, where's the actual tangible data? Like, is a survey done at the end when they leave, or, and if the answer is no, I mean, where's the trends? Did it happen like right before COVID or all during? I mean, I'm just, that is a financial implication. You know, I don't believe in that. If you don't do this, I'm gonna do that. I mean, I don't agree with that mentality. What I'm saying is, I don't know that we have all of the information, because you have 25 kids who go to a cyber charter. That's quite a lot of funding
And we try
on
to,
the other side.
and we try to gather that, and we have over the years to help try to frame some of our action steps moving forward. Like, some of the kids, we won't even see, i.e. like our Circle of Seasons kids. Like, they just enroll in kindergarten, they won't even come into the district for like kindergarten, like readiness or orientation, anything. They're just Circle of Seasons, and that they're buying into like a whole philosophy at that standpoint. And so what we've been able to glean from kids who have come back, and families that are willing to talk to us, and we're constantly, if we see somebody out and about, we find that they're a Circle of Seasons kid, we prod and we try to tease that out of them. And we do use that information to try to frame some of our strategic responses, like the kindergarten recruitment video that we're putting out, because they're trying to frame us in a way that says that we don't do the things that Circle of Seasons do, like, purposeful play and being outside and all those other type of things. And that's why we're trying to create the narrative, and we're trying to establish that. But yeah, we're trying to gather that information as much as we possibly can from those families that are willing to talk to us.
I would say the one trend, and I've shared this before, that is consistent is we went up during COVID, but we are back to where we were pre-COVID. The one thing that is consistent is approximately 10 to 12 kindergarten students we lose every year that we never see. So the thing that is consistent is our number from 2007, 8-ish has gone up about 12 kids every year. The majority of those have gone to Circle of Seasons. That is consistent.
And we're trying to capture what is that decision point. And that's why we have Mrs. Stitzel trying to get some of that kindergarten information. Now, we started with the flyers last year. We did the video this year. Like, what information do you need from us for you to make an informed decision as a parent between Circle of Seasons and Northwestern Lehigh, because we know once we get them in our seat for one day, they're gonna stay, they're gonna be a Tiger, because you're gonna fall in love with it, you're gonna go through the entire system. But it's just a matter of trying to get an audience with those folks prior to them making that decision to go to Circle Seasons. That's a big
Or
challenge.
choose anything other.
And any other, but that's our largest one.
And I don't know if you have this data, but do you have data where kids, if they went to preschool prior to kindergarten enrollment?
So we collected that, actually as part of elementary configuration, they gave us all of the information, and kindergarten at registration collects that. So when you do your kindergarten orientation, they do ask, were you in a formalized preschool program? If so, where? And I think they use that for, I'll say, academic data in terms of getting, so there are programs academically that show data with us in terms of needs and academic strengths, et cetera.
Yeah,
Is that what you're asking?
I should have clarified, those that enroll in Circle Seasons, like you don't know. Like, I'm just curious, you know, is it I never did daycare and so I don't have that, so I was just the
I
correlation.
mean, we don't, that's the challenge Dr. Sloan's talking about. I think our audience of who is us, but some students we don't see, they don't register. I don't have any information about whether they went to formalized preschool programs or not. We do collect that on our students, and we do have a master list of daycare programs where our students have gone and whether students coming from a formalized daycare program or not. But I don't know that about students that attend anywhere other than here.
And that's why we're trying to leverage that social media presence more and more, because we're hoping that somebody who's considering somewhere else will see and do a due diligence, and maybe look at us or go to our Facebook page or go to our website. And we could tell our story at that point to some degree. Even if you don't want to talk to somebody, you could watch a 3-minute video and you could get a pretty good sense about what Tiger Pride means for your young kids. So.
I mean, what we heard from parents is if you let our kids and our families and our pictures and our videos tell the story, like that's like they're, I don't say tired of hearing from administrator, tired of hearing somebody that tell them what they want to do or what they should know or do. But let your own pictures, your own videos, your own parents, your own kids tell the story.
We kind of got off
I
track
know,
on
sorry.
class size, but,
I'm sorry.
But, you know, this is all important too, and
Mhm.
there's a lot in the news these days about school choice. And, you know, there's a lot in the news about how bad public schools are. And people see national news and they automatically think it's happening here in their hometown school, which is not the case. But, you know, and some of the other rationale that I can't understand is why a parent would opt to have their child go to a cyber school where they don't graduate, they get a GED, instead of going through our cyber school where they can get a diploma. You know, why would a parent opt for that? But, you know, those are other, sometimes emotional, sometimes irrational decisions. But I would like to continue throughout the coming year, talking about class sizes and maybe having some teacher input and get this out in the public that we're considering doing something to try to equalize these class sizes between the two buildings or bring them all together under one building. How do we do that? I don't know. I don't have a recommendation to say what you should be doing, taking away from this discussion, but let's just think about it and let's have an update in a public meeting so that people know that we're talking about this.
Okay. For starters, will send you the enrollment to date so you can kind of see them and see exactly what I'm talking about. And then we can go from there it'll take some time to, the same thing you're talking about, like we did run at the time, like transportation, what it would look like. And I mean, we could even at some time, I think at that point said, you know, Dr. Hunter, you could call and say, tell me Cameron's bus stop, time, date, location, and we had it fully run with costs and times. I would tell you, and I told you this before, we did not focus on financials. We did not, because, there were financial savings, but it's not really why we made the decision.
But it's part of it.
It is,
and that's where-
100%.
I think though, if we go down this, this route, which I think is important, like, I think the credibility of the board though is also like up for debate, that if we choose to do this again, it's almost like we have to be in lockstep with one another, because if we're gonna bring it up, it's gonna obviously lead to the discussion we just had. And it's gonna then lead to a actionable, like, if we're calling out there's a problem that needs to be solved, then it's our responsibility to put, like, solve on the table.
Solution.
So if that's where we head, I'm not saying that that's anything like we're gonna do, I think we have to make sure that we all have proper discussion, so that your credibility and ours is not leading us to a place where we did, what was that, 2 years, I don't even remember when that was, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago? Which,
That was before COVID.
that was really difficult.
Yeah, I think COVID year would have been the implementation.
Maybe that was, maybe that was.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm glad that didn't
Last
happen.
time.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just another thing to consider, but I think Bill's suggestion of like surfacing that this was yet another year of having to figure out the inequities, even at a very minimum of class size inequities.
Right.
I think that's worth just starting to seed the problem publicly.
Is there any data available, easily available for what's going on with class size around Pennsylvania, around the country?
Yeah, PDE, I mean, I'd have to, it's the analysis of it, that's the issue. So PDE every year produces, I'll have to go back and see it, I don't want that in however many years we haven't talked about this. But PDE every year produces, class size, estimates.
Actuals.
They do actuals too, but they also project. That was why we were trying, so remember, we paid for the Decision Insight and they gave us a moderate example, and we were trying to compare how close did their predictions come to what we were experiencing actual. So if you remember, we used to put it up and go plus or minus, like every year, how close they came to what, because PDE does that, I'll say for free. I have to look if it still exists, if they're still doing it.
Well, I'd like to hear more about class size. Class size from 20 years ago to today, with technology and with TAs or the lack of TAs that we have now, all factor into the teacher's ability to deliver that curriculum to the kids.
It for sure does. And the other side of that is our ability to maintain the programs we have. To Dr. Hunsaker's point, we've raised taxes for a few years to maintain what it is that we have. And so when I come to you and say, I'm adding $100,000 teacher that's not budgeted, it might not be a lose of a program. It might be I have $100,000 expense and I'm gonna lose something along the way to fund something we didn't anticipate, but yet continue to raise taxes just to keep what we have.
Right.
And so, I mean, just off the top of my head, I remember we talked a lot about special education needs and how they could more accurately, and emotional support programs that we were able to offer, and ESL programs and things that we were able to offer, additions and or changes and or keeping what it is that we have with the finances that we projected for in the foreseeable future.
And see, that's kind of what I think, because again, decisions should never solely be based in finances, but it does take money to fund things. So that is a big important piece, but I think where a lot of us were like, there's more to this, like what's the rest of this? And like, that's where it wasn't, we didn't get, like, you gave us a pretty complete, but we were missing like just a couple little things to connect it all. And that's where like, I think like, it just wasn't so visible because it wasn't explicitly said. And like, sometimes I think just throwing it out there, again, that's not the sole reason, but it's a factor. And like, I think that's an important factor. So.
The Data Quality Office does release
They still do it?
I looked it up, yeah, the next release is going to be October 1st.
So they have last year's to date.
Correct, annually on October 1st.
So
Let's
they-
take a look at that.
But if you're looking at across the state, like, I wonder if there's some of the data qualities that kind of knew that. Like, I think you're looking for, did enrollment decrease or increase across the state? I mean, you can pull them up by district, but I don't know that you can pull them up by state and aggregate the data easily, or you can pull them up by state.
Yeah, it's all in Excel.
Dr. Shelby will help me with that. I haven't looked at it in
Yeah,
two-ish
whatever,
years.
whatever you would like, we could probably get. That's-
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the website's still up, but at one point, we had all of our communication, all the PowerPoint presentations, all the communications, all the pros and cons, academically, instructionally, ads, we had transportation routes, we had 4 or 5 different options. Some of them did involve the line, which I don't believe would solve the problem. But we even talked at one point about, I'm gonna call it phasing it in.
That was something that I.
Like starting with X year kindergarten and phasing it in.
The parents, like, it's just the new norm, because it just phased in. That was one thing that I had actually written to all the board members before I was on the board, that because I truly thought you guys were gonna vote yes, and that it wasn't going to get taken off the table, was that if you're gonna do this, I was pleading for you to phase it in, so that at least you gave the notice and the time. Because then if you started to phase it in and if for some reason it didn't work, then there was a way to kind of dial it back, because once you kind of go all in, you're all in. So kind of what you're saying, once we're going down this road, there's no going back.
Well, I think the same emotion's gonna be there whether you have it or you don't, when you have it, how you put it out. And I agree with Rachel, that conversation with us, I mean, you've seen boards across the United States make or break decisions and how the board functions. And I mean, not being on the board at that time, you could tell, I'm sure some were yes, some were no. It was a spirited conversation. So I do have concerns. I agree there's an issue. But I think how we collect the data, like the data that, I'm not saying wasn't useful. I'm just saying that I agree, like Lauren hit it, our kids get a great education currently. So that can't be the selling piece, right?
We want to keep doing that, and I'm not sure financially we're gonna be able to
Hear that.
afford to keep
I
doing
hear
it.
that.
That right there.
And that,
And we said that, I mean, like, we need to keep doing it, and we're going to, at some point, I think it was Todd Fleiser who was on the board, and I said, we're going to lose so much that the education that your children are going to, I mean, because at the time, we cut all those programs out of middle school, if you remember. And I said, when your kids get to middle school, that program's not gonna look like what you think it looks like now, because we're going to, over time, have lost so much that the program you think you were educated in, or you think your children are being educated in, will be so, say bare bones, but so different because of this. Because that was the time we cut computers, and we cut the rotations, and we cut a gym teacher. And so that changed, and we had made changes to the gifted programming, and I don't know them all off the top of my head. But you know, when you get to the high school and you start looking at, and we're not here yet, but when you have classes that now you're looking at APs and you're looking at opportunities that matter to students who are then gonna go to college, and those programs don't exist anymore, and you had a chance to make that decision 2 or 3 years ago, your chances now gone, not now, I'm saying it would be now gone, and now you'd be saying, it looks different than what I thought it would look like.
well, then you're not marketable.
We've been cutting costs for the last 4 or 5 budgets in order to maintain what we said as a priority, but we are in the cutting phase right now.
Yeah, and there's not much more to cut. That's the problem. I mean, when my first year, talk about like, you know, years of chief
Yeah.
superintendent, my first year, we cut $1 million worth of personnel.
Right.
$1 million worth of personnel.
Mhm.
And like Bill and I talked about, I don't know the number, he probably absolutely does, and Christie would, but our budget year over year doesn't go up a lot. But
There's like 800.
there's
It's like-
nowhere else.
It's like what a mill would bring, what the Act One would bring in. That's what our expenses are, but we start out with that $2 million gap every year. But, okay, thank you for
Yes.
the discussion.
Someone will have to give us direction about what you want, or even when we present something, if there's something that you think needs to be phrased differently, or is not clear, or not transparent, or my words not the right words to use, please let us know.
I mean, if we're gonna get new data for class size in October for the previous year, let's just take a look at that as a starting.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
So I guess, are we all in agreement that this is what we want
You're
Jen
missing
to
a few
do?
board members. You're missing a few.
I know, so,
At minimum, he said about October, so I think maybe we talk about it in August, and you just give me some direction about, do you want us to dig into the October data when it comes out from PDE and start there? You don't need to decide that tonight. I think you need a whole board to make that decision.
I would also want to know if this is something that you were truly going to implement, like realistically, what's like the appropriate time frame to do so? Meaning like if this was something that, you know, is this 2 years off? Is it, you know, like time frame wise? So that's just something to think about for the next conversation.
Yeah, originally we started talking about it in March and April, and I think people thought we were gonna do it for the next year, and it was actually a full like year out.
There's a lot of planning involved.
A lot.
Well, when it was taken off the table, it was taken off with the statement that it's not dead, it's gonna come back.
Yes, but you also had a
And,
current board member say
and
that they never
then-
wanted to hear about it
And
again.
then COVID came,
So just
and
throwing
it
that,
just kind of disappeared.
You have
Yeah.
a current board
Yes.
member who,
who said he never wanted to hear about it again. I think there might have possibly been two.
well, I said it's the word not spoken.
Because it was just removed from the agenda, it wasn't even discussed.
It wasn't voted
It was
on, so it
just-
was
it was
removed from the
just-
agenda, it wasn't voted on, and I think there were a couple board members who did not ever want to hear about it again, and a few board members who wanted I think the words were a more creative solution. Which I'm a smart lady, but I don't know what that is.
have no other.
I don't know what that is. I mean, we've been dealing with it. If there was a smart, creative solution that wouldn't cause the disruption, we would have come up with it by now. I don't know what that is.
All right, we'll move forward. Thank you. New business. All right, communications, go to the floor, no one's here. Adjournment, looking for a motion.
Motion.
second.
All right, with that,
Good job, Allison.
we have exec session in a few minutes. actually.
We do.
Good job.